Boop boop. Hello. We're back. I just... Oh no, chat is broken. Hold up, can we fix this? Hold on. Okay, there we go, I fixed chat. Chat is fine. Okay. We're fine now. We're fine. OBS, why would you do that to chat? Anyway, we're continuing with Yamazaki now. I have been messaged? Have I been messaged? I don't... Oh god. Okay, the Twitch things are working again. Okay. That's what that was. Let's continue on with Yamazaki. Yes, we are in chapter 3. Okay. We're very close to the end. Let's go. With the Imperial Army came chaos for its enemies, as they swept through Kyo and swiftly proceeded east through the Koshu Kaido. The Shinsengumi rebranded itself as the Koyo Regulatory Company, enticed by glory from their former employer to subdue their Imperial foes. Blech. The outcome of the battle in Kofu, however, left the Shinsengumi with neither a castle nor an army to fill it, and they licked the wounds of their defeated in disgrace. The window of time in which our men had put up a capable fight was fleeting, and soon Imperial forces pushed us into an embarrassing retreat. During the retreat, Yamazaki-san and I were separated from the rest of the troop, dragging our exhausted bodies back to Edo, hoping for a spot of good news. Our return trip took several days, and by the end of it, my feet were aching and haggard.
危険な信頼を買って出てくれたんだ。せめて。いえ。
As their conversation bounced back and forth in the background, I gazed around the common room. The only other men standing in the room were Saito-san and Shimada, whose glum expressions were directed at the floor. We had to accept whatever good news we could find. In our case, it was that all of the captains had presumably exited the battle unscathed, including Kondo-san. Our men were bruised, but still alive. There was no time to wallow in our relief, though, and both Yamazaki-san and I described our mysterious encounter by Kazuma, including his revelation.
しかし、よもや新政府軍の内部で高堂さんが羅刹を生み出しているとは。風間と天霧が告げた話だそうだが、その情報は信用に足るのか。
おそらくは奴らとしても嘘をついて得をする理由もないでしょう。
しかし、高堂さんの情報がこんな形で手に入るとは思いませんでしたね。ですが、高堂さんは雪村君の父親で。
I appreciate your concern, but I'm okay. Originally, I had ventured to Kyoto alone in order to gather clues about Father's strange disappearance. 4 years of investigation produced no results, and only recently had I learned anything about him. Needless to say, it was a little deflating for my first sleep to be an indictment on his nefarious activities.
落ち水を作り出した挙句、この国の民の半数を羅刹にするのか。その話が事実ならば放っておけるものではないな。
ただでさえ出立準備で忙しいってのに、また厄介な話が出てきたもんだ。
Moving? Is the Shinsengumi planning on living somewhere?
弱腰の幕臣しかいねえ江戸にとどまってても拉致が開かねえからな。俺たちはこれから会津へ向かう。一緒に戦うなら気心がわかる相手がいる。
会津の松平片森公ならば我々を受け入れてくださるだろう。
I had recognized Lord Matsudaria's name as a military commissioner to whom the Shinsengumi had reported while we were stationed in Kyo. Having such a powerful figure as an ally would surely bolster the Shinsengumi's morale.
さて、どうしたもんか。出立前に敵方の羅刹隊に対処しておきたいのは山々だが。
現在の情報では動くに動けません。まずはどこに身を隠しているのかわからないことには。
それなら情報収集を俺と雪村君に任せてください。
Yamazaki-san's suggestion was immediately met with a dubious expression from Saito, whose eyes thinned.
まさかあんたたちだけで対処しようというのではないだろうな。いくらその身が羅刹になったとはいえ、家臣は禁物だ。
分かっています。その家臣は先日へし折られたばかりです。
Yamazaki-san snapped at Saito, biting his lip derisively.
別に正面から戦うわけではなく、まずは江戸入りした新政府軍の中にそれらしき部隊がいないかを探るつもりです。もし江戸城で戦になるとしたら、新政府軍が羅刹隊を投入してくる可能性もありますから。
Same here. I want to go along with Yamazaki-san. Even if he's wearing a disguise, I think I'll be able to pick him out of a group instantly. Ichikata-san stroked his chin in contemplation as the rest of us traded our arguments vehemently. After a while, he heaved a large sigh.
分かった。その件はお前らに任せろ。動きがあったらすぐにこちらに知らせろ。羅刹の件は新選組の罪でもある。
いざとなれば俺たちが息の根を止める。
Days had passed as Hijikata-san assigned everyone to their next order of business. As directed, the Shinsengumi departed Edo in a convoy for Aizu, recruiting every able-bodied warrior to join in the growing resistance effort. Unfortunately, not everyone in the Shinsengumi was pleased with Hijikata-san's decision. Nagakura and Harada, who had previously voiced their discontent with Kondo-san, publicly announced their decision to leave the Shinsengumi. Yamazaki-san and I had other plans, remaining in Edo to locate any hint of where father could be. The afternoon sunset dyed the sky red, lurking above the horizon like an ominous premonition. We walked as a pair through Edo underneath the soft glow of the dying sunlight. How are you feeling, Yamazaki-san? Do you think it would have been better if we waited until sundown?
いや、大丈夫だ。この時間ともなると、だいぶ日も陰ってくるからな。
As we exchanged pleasantries, I noticed people of all walks of life flitting by us hurriedly. Word of the shogunate's failed campaigns spread. So too did news of the imperial army's march to Edo. 300 years of peace under the Tokugawa's regime were about to come crashing down, and Edo was at the center of the collapse. I eavesdropped on the conversations nearby, hearing everyone murmur nervously to one another.
どうした、雪村君。
なんでもない。I was wondering to myself what my life would have been like if I had never met the Shinsengumi. If, on that fateful night, I had never bumped into the bloodthirsty creature, things would have unfolded differently. I would have hung my head low, returning to Edo as a downtrodden wreck. The hideous truth of father's work would have eluded me, and my days would be wasted in waiting for him.
君にとってはそちらの方がずっと幸せだったのかもしれないな。真実など知ることもなく、ただの町娘として暮らしていた方が。
But if none of this ever happened, then I wouldn't have met you, Yamazaki-san. So I don't regret a single thing. I'm more than elated with the choices that I have made. I love this spread, Yamazaki!
その以前も言わせてもらったが、もう一度言わせてくれないか。君は卑怯だ。突然俺の心を奪わないでくれ。
Huh? What do you mean by that?
なんでもない。それより話を戻そう。
After his little outburst, Yamazaki-san cleared his throat, assuming a stern tone that I could tell was forced.
新政府軍が江戸入りするまでにはまだいくらか時間に余裕がある。だからその前に俺たちがやっておくべきことは。
You want to investigate the house I used to live in?
そうだ。以前東堂さんたちが軽く調べてくれたとは聞いているが、何か見落としがあったかもしれない。うまくいけば東堂さんの行方についても何らかの手がかり。
Yamazaki-san cut himself short. Suddenly, I heard his footsteps come to a halt. Yamazaki-san? Out of curiosity, I turned my head to get a peek. Yamazaki-san clutched his hand over his chest, grunting loudly as his eyes began bulging from their sockets. Oh no! There was no mistaking it. He was experiencing a bout of bloodlust. Worst of all, it was occurring in the middle of a crowded public street with passers-by on all sides. I hastily threw my arm around Yamazaki-san's shoulders, whose teeth were clamped over his tongue as he kept himself from crying aloud in agony. Yamazaki-san, this way! was imperative that he remained out of sight. The two of us bolted into a dim, narrow alley, out of sight and away from sunlight. I kept my back facing the main road, and I wiped the beads of cold sweat dripping from Yamazaki-san's forehead. Yamazaki-san, I'm here for you. Don't worry, I'll... Say it with me now for round 3. Giving him blood. I'll let you drink some of my blood. My eyes darted around us, and after ensuring that we were safe, I unsheathed my kodachi and ran the edge of my blade against the tip of my index finger. He flicked his tongue on my cut, taking soft sips of my blood as it trickled onto his lips. There was something naughty about how eagerly he sucked my blood, gently nibbling on the fingertip. I couldn't help but think of the townsfolk bouncing to and from the destinations in the background, so I started growing nervous. Yamazaki? I think you need to hurry, or someone's going to see us. I relented, feeling the pressure of his lips pinching my finger as it raced up my arm. As he finished, his pale face was beginning to regain color. The side effects of his affliction were taking a larger toll on his body than I could have. Imagined. Yamazaki-san fell unconscious on my lap, dropping like a stone to the floor. I panicked, shifting my eyes. Has anyone seen us? Did anyone hear the howl of his raspy voice? Regardless of either question, it was pertinent that we moved out of sight. I took a deep breath, inhaling as I threw Yamazaki-san's arm over his shoulder and supported his weight. Over my shoulder should have been. His frame may have been smaller than some of the other Shinsengumi men, but dead weight is no joke. I mustered all my grit, considering there was no one around us who could help. The Shinsengumi had migrated north for Aizu. Both Nagakura and Harada vacated their possessions, and Okuta was still bedridden, ill with a respiratory disease. For once, I had only myself to rely upon. I hadn't taken 2 steps before my body started aching, and just when I thought I would faint...
Oi, 病人か? だったら運ぶの手伝ってやるよ。近くの診療所でいいのか?
I tensed, gradually turning my head over my shoulder. The amiable voice calling out to us belonged to a young man, not too much older than Yamazaki-san or myself. A long, frizzled tuft of hair covered his head, and he furrowed his brow upon closer inspection. I can't speak today. He was cheerful, and I had an inclination to trust him. It was a peculiar feeling, almost as if we had been previously acquainted despite never having met. However, I shook my head, stopping myself from dwelling too much. I'm okay, thank you. I can manage just fine on my own. I stepped backwards, making sure to keep Yamazaki-san's face hidden behind me. A look of confusion fell on the young man's face, and he scratched his coarse mess of hair curiously.
悪い悪い。突然見知らぬ奴に声をかけられたら、そりゃ警戒しちまうよな。けどどうにも行き倒れを見ると、放っておけないんだ。
Oh. On the outside, he looked totally harmless. But the timing of his offer to help was a tad conspicuous. I eased my back, lowering my shoulder. The young man gasped, widening his eyes when he caught sight of Yamazaki-san's face behind my shoulder.
山崎おいおいお前新選組の山崎進だろああそうだよ俺だ伊吹龍之介だ
We have found Ibuki again! Somehow, I felt Yamazaki-san perk up in response, but without a clear view of his face, it was impossible to know. I was hoping to judge the young man's reaction. Behind me, Yamazaki-san sighed. He was cycling through a flurry of emotions, or at least, this was the impression I gathered. Once Yamazaki-san began recognizing the man in front of us, I heard his voice quiver as if he were on the verge of tears.
なんだよお前無事だったのか新選組が負けて戻ってきたって聞いて俺はてっきりなあよかったら俺のところに来いよ積もる話だってたくさん
いや悪いが人違いだ
え何言ってんだよお前山崎進だろいっつもしかめっ面で不器用なぐらいにクソ真面目でだけど本当は優しくて
Damn it, Buki!
新選組の観察型で医者の代わりもしてて違う俺は優しくなんてないしもう医者代わりなんて名乗れないあおい
Suddenly, Yamazaki-san let go of me, seemingly having regathered his strength, and he sprinted away. For a moment, I stood there awkwardly, watching Yamazaki-san distance himself from the man known as Ibuki. I'm so sorry, but please excuse me. I bowed politely towards Ibuki before spinning around to rush after Yamazaki-san. We dashed through the bevy of crowds packing the darkening streets. By the time we had reached the city's outskirts, a hazy dust covered the sky above us. We made it. We arrived at Yukimura Clinic. Time had changed my old house. The paint peeled upon the outside walls, sprinkling bits onto the stone walkway. It was my home, but only in name. The tile engraving with our family name was fading, and I grazed it with my fingers, tracing the path of the familiar grooves. I've been gone for so long. The house has fallen into a state of disrepair.
ここが君の家か
My father and I lived here together. I recognized the scent in the air, slowly ambling past the entrance gate. Scattered weeds emerged through cracks in the stone, and I rested my hand upon the door. Before I slid open the entrance, I turned around and faced Yamazaki-san to ask him something. Was the man who bumped into us earlier an acquaintance of yours?
話を聞いていなかったのかあいつは知り合いなんかじゃない
Yamazaki-san barked defensively, but I could tell that he was lying to me. His reasons for hiding it were unclear to me, so I asked Yamazaki if they were, friends. If he wasn't an acquaintance, was he your friend?
どうしてそうなるあいつは別に友人じゃ
Sure, Yamazaki. But he knew your name. His face lit up when he recognized you. Besides, your reaction was very strange. Yamazaki-san had normally displayed level-headedness in moments of extreme duress, which made his erratic behavior all the more troubling. When you spoke with Ibuki, I could tell there's something shifted in your speech. Most of all, I had never seen you get so excited before. It was impossible to miss.
そこは仕方ないだろうあいつにはいろいろと迷惑もかけたし逆にかけられたりもしたからな
だからまあそういう意味では友人と言えるか。
Alright, friends. I feel now we gotta do a watch in the stage Discord of the third season, because that's the origin story of Ibuki, basically. And the Roshigumi, we gotta do that now. At last, Yamazaki-san admitted the truth, letting a small sigh out from under his breath.
あいつ伊吹と俺が出会ったのは君と出会うよりもさらに前。新選組がまだ老子組と呼ばれていた頃、京の都で新選組の黎明期を共に過ごした、いわば昔の仲間ということになるな。
Yamazaki-san gazed longingly at the sky above us, watching the star patterns twinkle brightly. His voice trailed off, causing me to ponder what may have caused a rift between Ibuki and the Shinsengumi. I wondered how he settled all the way here in Edo. Yamazaki-san left it at that, letting out another sigh as his eyes dropped to meet mine.
伊吹と俺たちの道はとうの昔に分かたれたんだ。俺たちは誇りと共に戦う道を選び、あいつは血塗られた道に背を向けて日の当たる世界へ戻っていった。あいつが無事に生きているならそれ以上のことは望まない。
You speak very warmly about him. He must have meant a lot to you.
不器用な男だからな。俺たちの現状を知ったら見かねて首を突っ込んでこないとは言い切れない。だからこれでいいんだ。行こう、雪村君。
He nodded, and I returned the favor. Yamazaki-san and I slid open the door, carefully stepping onto the dusty tatami into my childhood home. Memories of the past came flooding back to me. Stools where patients sat, and father's study, my old bedroom, cabinets and closets left ajar. Together we sifted through documents, but nothing useful caught our attention. I found lots of patient records and prescriptions for medical doses, but
やはり大きな手がかりとなるようなものを残していくほど不用心ではないか。
Here's that. I need my water, which is attached to my backpack currently. There we go. Oh, it's actually cold. Nice. This is a water break. Take your water. Oops. Yamazaki-san heaved a lamenting sigh, glancing at me inquisitively as he flipped through a stack of parchment.
となると、あとは君の記憶だよりだな。何か行動さんのことで気になる思い出はないか？
So, Yamazaki's route is the best, in my opinion, personally, because he is best boy. But he manages, his route manages to do something that no other route has managed to do for me. So we're gonna witness it. Don't know if it's an hour later, but we'll see.
例えば、よくどこに出かけていたとか、家で研究していたものとか、普段の性格がどうだったとか。
Well, from time to time, father liked to step out. It was usually to see his patients, though. Other than that, it's all a little fuzzy. All I can remember is that he was a remarkably kind man. My eyes wandered around the room, hoping to find some kind of totem that would help jog my memory. I'd spent so much time in this house that it saddened me to think about how ephemeral all of it was. Father always loved treating his patients. Father, why'd you want to become a doctor? I don't know what age Yukimura is at right now.
お前もそういうことに興味を持つようになったか。
Okay, this is her when it's younger, okay.
乱暴医になったのはそれほど深い理由があったわけではないよ。ただ優れた西洋医学を学びたかっただけさ。だが最近は医学書を読めば読むほど西洋とこの国の差を実感させられる。ポルトガル、オランダ、そしてイギリスにプロイセン、多くの国がこの国に目をつけ始めた。この国はおそらくいずれ西洋の国々の餌食となるだろう。それゆえに私は思うんだよ。本当にこのままでいいのだろうかとね。
Huh?
ああ、すまない。お前にはまだ少し難しかったね。ほら、そろそろ眠りなさい、千鶴。お話をしてあげよう。何がいいかね。
It doesn't matter to me, Father. I just want to hear the sound of your voice.
そうかい。じゃあ、今日は昔話でもしてあげようか。
As I strung together my past memories of father, the only ones coming to mind were scenes of his generosity and charisma. My eyes slowly drooped downwards, and I shook my head as I muttered in a hushed tone. He truly loved me. Day in and day out, he would treat his patients, but somehow he always found time for me too. I remember when I prepared dinner for the first time. He ate the charred fish, licking his lips and insisting that he loved it even though it was terrible. Whenever I fell ill, he would keep a lantern by my bedside, staying up with me all night until I slept. I felt like I was excavating myself, sifting for clues in places where there weren't. I only saw his smile. Still, I needed to remind myself why I was here. If he truly wishes to change this country into one filled with furies, does that undo all the good he's ever done? Was any of it real?
まだそうと決まったわけじゃない。本人に聞くまでもわからない。
Yamazaki took a small step closer to me. As I trembled with anxiety, he closed the distance between us. He didn't lift a finger. Instead, he whispered, bringing our two faces within inches of each other. Something was compelling me to grab onto him, but I feared acting too presumptuously.
泣きたければ泣くといい。俺は胸をかすめらしくできない。
Dan! Hi. A woo? Question mark? I took solace knowing that Yamazaki and I unequivocally agree upon one thing. Yes, Sadawu. Sadawu works. Father had committed egregious sins that threatened our way of life and violated human order. It's going alright. It's going alright for now. I didn't like the fact that I had to start stream late, but oh well. I'm so sorry, Yamazaki. Is it okay if we just stay like this for a little while?
君の望みなどいつも
Yamazaki-san softly wrapped his arms around me. With a gentle finger, he pushed the tears off my cheek. As much as I hated to admit it, I was overwhelmed with emotion, crushed by a lifetime of meaningless memories that were wilting and fading with time. If only I could retreat into the comfort of Yamazaki-san's frail, loving embrace until the end of time. It's snowy. Oh no, it's April! April 1868. Shit's about to go down. The cherry blossoms floating in the wind would find their resting place on the ground beneath us. No, it's July. Edo was undergoing a changing of the guard. The Supreme Commander, Lord Ieyasu Tokugawa, was the last in a line of succession that held dominion over Edo and its castle for over 300 years. What was once a prosperous bastion had become an olive branch, offered by the fading Tokugawa remnants as a token of surrender to the imperial army. For the townspeople of Edo, all that mattered to them was that they were untouched by the kiss of war. To the Shinsengumi, however, the surrender was a slap in the face. Their sacrifices and toils were wantonly discarded so the shogunate could save its own skin. As for Yamazaki-san and myself, we weren't quite sure of what to make out of the situation. Because the Imperial Army's march hadn't resulted in an all-out battle, the Fury Corps wasn't thrusted into another needless conflict just to hold Edo Castle. And as the two of us awaited news from the war front, we decided to remain in Edo, cautiously inspecting the incoming troops for any signs of malfeasance. Oh god. It only took 10 days for us to receive the news. Kondos has been captured by the Imperial Army? Hearing the news knocked the wind out of me, and my legs buckled so quickly that I thought I'd faint.
ああ、流山で新政府軍に包囲された際、近藤局長は部隊を逃がすためにおとりとなって自ら投降したそうだ。
Damn it, Dan.
そしてそう遠くないうちに私の形状が斬首に処される。
Yamazaki-san bit into his lips, quivering as he stood up and began nervously pacing around the room. Oh yeah, they're both hard words. All of a sudden, he snapped his fingers as if he figured out some kind of solution. Yamazaki, what are you planning? My best boy, what are you planning? Where are you going?
決まっているだろう。これから局長の救出へと向かう。
But this is a clear trap. They're trying to lure the Shinsengumi from out of hiding. Bestest boy, right here.
だったらこの場で座したまま斬首の方が届くのを待てというのか。
Well...
すまない。君が俺のことを心配してくれているのは痛いほどわかる。だがそれでも行かなくちゃならないんだ。俺は新選組の影だ。影の光がなければ存在できないのだから。
Then, let me accompany you. I might not have known him as well as you, but there's no way I can abandon Kondo-san. Here we go. We traveled to a forest of bamboo where soft moonlight flashed through tall bamboo stalks and breathed rhythmic sconces. I like this background. I think this is the only time it's used. Horses with imperial insignias were tied to a post beside the Itabashi Inn, signifying that we'd arrived. Yamazaki-san and I ducked low to the ground, scoping the encampment for any signs of Kondo-san. It's quiet, almost eerily so. I don't see anyone around us. I'm getting the creeps. If Itabashi was supposedly housing an entire army, then the complete lack of noise was disconcerting. Considering their prisoner was the Shinsengumi's chief, arguably one of the highest profile officers they could have arrested, no one was standing guard.
まず間違いなく罠だろうな。慎重に潜入経路を探るとしよう。
But I'm not sure whom they're trying to trap.
いや、それほど複雑に考える必要などないよ。
Well, fuck.
相手をうまく罠にかけるため手を尽くさねばならぬ状況ならまだしも、今回は罠と分かっていても飛び込んでこざるを得ないような状況なのだからね。
Father? There he stood, his bald head glistening brightly under the moonlight after 4 years of searching. My father, Kodo Yukimura.
ああ、久しいね、千鶴。しばらく見ないうちに随分と大人びたような。
For a second, I could have sworn that time froze. Save for a kind, familiar grin appearing on Father's face. It was as if I were transported to a previous time, a child in front of her father's, basking in his warm glow. But it was merely the ghost of a thought. I had to remind myself to stop from sprinting up to him and wrapping my arms around his body. But here he was. But he was here. Both are correct, I think. Father had a malicious glint in his eye, resembling the look of a man who committed the sins for which he had been notoriously accused. On both sides of him stood his cohort of Furies, their eyes too glowing in the darkness. I held onto a thread of hope, steeling myself from letting my voice tremble as I called out to him. Father, why are you doing all of this? Why are there Furies with you? Surely Cosmo's omen was a misunderstanding. There was no way that Cosmo could have known Father's intentions, so perhaps he was mistaken. The man in front of me, my beloved father, was incapable of committing atrocities against mankind. I hoped against all hope that he would assure me, first with his eyes, then with his eloquent words. My heart, sadly, was too far from the mark.
なぜですか。なるほど。新選組にいただけあって、ある程度の事情は知っているようだ。
Father nodded, grinning wryly. Father, what's the meaning in all of this?
何よ。決まっているじゃないか。私は理想の国を作りたいんだよ。西洋のことを知れば知るほど、私はこの国に絶望してしまったんだ。この国はいずれアジア諸国のように西洋の圧倒的な力の前に屈することになるだろう。だから私はその前に作り変えるんだよ。この国を戦える国へと。
戦えるというのは民を羅刹に変えるという意味か。血の渇きに狂わされ、家族、仲間も愛する者ですら手にかけようとしてしまう化け物。この国をそんな代物がはびこるこの世の地獄へ変えようというのか。
Why, Father? The father I knew would never do such a horrid thing. Everything I knew, I learned from you. What about your patients? You cared for them and they loved you. Each and every time I drew a fever, you were there by my bedside, staying up all night.
鉄よ。ああ、それは当然のことじゃないか。
His lips curled into a genial smile. Genial smile. The warm, soothing bellow of his voice sank my heart.
もし私まで眠ってしまったら、投与した薬の経過を観察できないだろう。
What?
羅刹の力は当然素晴らしいが、純血の鬼はそれ以上のものを秘めている。あまりに貴重な存在だから重度の実験はできなかったが、本当にお前の生命力は素晴らしいよ。常人なら治療の毒を何度か持っても軽く苦しむだけで回復していたからね。
Goodbye, Dad! I will stay alive. Dose of poison? You're lying. I replayed the words in my head, refusing to accept them as they were a horrifying, chilling reality. My mind was rattled by the cognitive dissonance. How could a voice so sweet tell a truth so sour?
新型の羅刹といっても日の光への耐性をつける程度しかできないが、お前の協力があれば話は別だ。お前の血を使えば今より効率よく落ち水を量産することができる。千鶴、私は今までお前をこの時のために育ててきたんだよ。江戸を離れていたのは予想外だったが、何、こうして戻ってきてくれたんだ。その血は必ずや羅刹の強化に役立つだろう。
もういい。その薄汚い口を閉じろ、木村行動。
Damn, so smooth.
ああ、山崎君にも感謝しているよ。まさか娘をここに連れてきてくれる。しかし局長が斬首との方を流しておけば新選組が殺到するかと思ったが、かかったのはネズミ一匹とは新選組の方々も存外情が薄いようだ。
やはりその情報を流したのは俺の罠だったか。
罠とは人聞きが悪い。近藤さんがいらっしゃるのは事実。その上で用向きを伺おう。一体何をしに来たんだね、山崎君。
決まっている。近藤局長は返してもらうぞ。切る。
With that, Yamazaki-san hurled a kunai at lightning speed towards father, prompting one of his fury minis to dive in the path of the knife, killing it. Father, however, hadn't even broken a sweat, nor had his smug smile left his face.
ゆっくりと親子の再会もさせてくれないとは。雰囲気を察することのできないお人だ。
局長をおとなしく返してくれるなら捕らえた上で話ぐらいはさせてやる。
そういうわけにはいかないな。新政府軍への義理もあるのでね。近藤さんをおとりにここで新選組を叩いておけという話だったが、首一つでもないよりはマシだね。
しとる。
As Yamazaki-san kicked into a sprint, a crowd of furies moved towards him, salivating at the mouth.
この程度俺の相手になるか。
Father watched Yamazaki-san cleave through the furies with thinned eyes, stroking his chin absent-mindedly.
おお、なるほど、興味深い。私の失踪後に落ち水を新選組独自の手法で改造したのか。それとも本人の素質の問題か。ここまで羅刹としての能力が 素早さに特化した例は極めて軽微だが
Father, you're changing.
これが鬼の血を引く者の本当の姿だよ。もっとも私は落ち水によってこの力を得たのだがね。
Father slid his hand into his pockets, clutching a fistful of scalpels before flinging them into the fray. Yamazaki-san!
何
The scalpels rained upon the horde of warriors, hitting not only Yamazaki-san but all of the surrounding Furies as well.
味方を巻き込むのに躊躇はないか。傷が治る羅刹ならではの戦法だな。だがそれは俺とて同じことだ。小刀が2、3本刺さったところで
残念ながら的外れな予想だ。
Suddenly, the Furies around Yamazaki-san collapsed to the floor, moaning and writhing in agony. Their eyes bulged, blood trickling slowly from their sockets and nostrils in a morbid scene. What? Why aren't their wounds recovering? My face strained of color as I glanced over at Yamazaki-san.
何をした？
Stab wounds from the scalpels tattered Yamazaki-san's thin arms and legs, and he dropped to his knees.
嬉しいだろう。羅刹の身にこれは毒とな。再生を期待するだけ無駄だよ。
Father shot a quick, smug look at Yamazaki-san. Then he shifted his line of sight towards me. A menacing glow radiated behind his familiar eyes, summoning chills that clawed along the length of my spine.
さて千鶴、こんな状況だが会えて嬉しいよ。これから羅刹体を大きくするためにはどうしても純血の鬼の力が必要なんだ。
What do you want from me?
大丈夫。お前は何もしなくていい。何も考えなくてもいいんだよ。ただ毎日死なない程度に血をもらうだけだ。羅刹にとって何より甘美なその鬼の血をね。
貴様は何を言っているのか分かっているのか。
もちろんだ。改良が進めば羅刹は純血の鬼の血が入った新型の羅刹となる。日の光も恐れず不死の体を持ち鬼の力をもしのぐ完成された羅刹。いわば千鶴は羅刹の母となる。これは実に素晴らしいことだよ。
Nope. No way. There's no way.
まあそうだ。医学の心得があるなら山崎君は私の助手になってみるかい。毎日欠かすことなく千鶴の血を絞るだけ。君のような医者もどきでもできるとても簡単な仕事だ。
Yamazaki-san screamed passionately at the top of his lungs, attempting to lift his body from the ground. Before Yamazaki-san could stand, Father kicked him back down, then pressed his foot on a scalpel lodged in Yamazaki-san's abdomen deeper into the flesh. Father, stop!
やめるかどうかはお前の答え次第だよ。さあ、お前はいい子だから父さんの夢を手伝ってくれるね。
The intense pressure of father's weight caused Yamazaki-san's wounds to gush heavily with blood. I wanted nothing more than to reject father's appalling requests, but if he were to keep things like this, Yamazaki-san would surely have bled to death. I was shaking violently with rage, and just as I was about to give in out of desperation, a blood-curdling scream echoed from somewhere behind us, and I glanced backwards out of reflex.
何事だ。
わかりません。何者かが次々と兵士を倒して。なんだこいつ。我々の弱点。
As the Fury had said, something was lurking in the shadows, carving through their flesh and bones like a butcher through swine. Few individuals were aware of how to kill Furies outright, let alone accomplish the deed successfully. If the Shinsengumi men were already in Aizu, then whoever could it be? The attacker's silhouette came within view.
俺、何者だ。
The impenetrable wall of Furies had crumbled. Scattered along the floor were the ghoulish remains of flayed limbs soaking up rich puddles of blood.
新選組
Something remarkable happened. A vision, cutting like light through darkness, clad in a sky blue haori.
新選組一番組組長沖田総司
Okita!
どうしてあなたがここにはあまるでボロ雑巾だねそれでも新選組の大使かな山崎君僕がここに来た理由は当然一つしかないよ久々だけど高堂さん今すぐ近藤さんをこちらに渡してくれるかなおとなしく渡したら楽に殺してあげる
Okita shot a cold glare at father from a distance, anticipating himself to lunge quickly on command. His eyes dripped with a hateful aggression.
もう一匹ネズミが迷い込んできましたかですが君の話は聞いているよ沖田君持病に侵されて余命幾ばくもないと今も立っているのがやっとだろうどうやってここまで来たのやら
Okita remained silent. His cheeks were pale and gaunt, and his clothes were loose over his delicate body. It was clear that his condition had worsened. I grew anxious, hoping he wouldn't faint.
さあね余命幾ばくもないかは実際に試してみればわかると思うけど
あらかかれ
Father raised his hand, signaling a gang of Furies encircling her group to lunge for Okita. One thing Okita hadn't lost was his swagger, and he fearlessly walked towards the rushing horde, letting his sword screech as he dragged it along the floor. Ground! Only when the Furies were a split second from crashing into him had Okita raised his sword, piercing into one's chest with impeccable precision. He then maneuvered his sword into a fulcrum, using his foe's lifeless body to propel his momentum forward. In one swift movement, he twisted the blade out of the Fury's body and slashed at the next incoming Fury, decapitating its head cleanly from its body. The resulting force knocked Okita square on his back, but he had enough muscle memory to roll out of the way, dodging the bloody stampede. His body was filthy with blood and dirt. Soon he launched into an astonishing display of technique, bouncing between furies like his sword was guiding his movements. One by one, the furies fell victim to his graceful destruction, ribbons of blood splashing in the air. He persevered, spurred by his mission to save Kondo-san.
バカな。なぜそこまで戦える？
決まってるでしょ。刀が震えなくても、足が折れて立てなくても。そんなもの何一つ僕が近藤さんを助けない理由にはならない。
あれ、死に損ないが。
死に損なってるのはそっち。新型の羅刹って言っても大したことないよね。瀕死の人間一人片付けられないんだからさあ。
Without missing a beat, Okita slashed his blade into an enemy Fury's head, tearing its face asunder and exposing brain and teeth with his blade's sharp edge.
何ぼーっとしてるの、千鶴ちゃん。山崎君を連れて早く逃げなよ。
You expect me to leave you here, Okita?
戦えない君と瀕死の山崎君がここに残って何か意味があるのかな。はっきり言って足手まといなんだよ。
Okita coldly dismissed my concern, turning his back towards us before addressing me softly.
言うことを聞きなよ、千鶴ちゃん。
Okita spoke candidly with his usual sardonic tone. But his cocksure attitude was a front, and his eyes dripped with melancholy. He cleared his throat, shifting his line of sight. If I couldn't learn to see through Okita's veneer and accept a sincere sentiment when he offered it, then I would be disrespecting his sacrifice. Okita, may the fortunes of war rest in your favor.
ありがとう。引き分けのいい子は嫌いじゃないよ。
I bit my lip to the point of breaking the skin. I lifted Yamazaki-san up, letting him rest on my back, and began to walk as I heard Okita's voice behind me.
今行くよ、近藤さん。敵を倒してたどり着いたらいっぱい褒めてくれるかな。
Everything after leaving Okita was a blur. With Yamazaki-san on my back, I sprinted through the forest, fighting the urge to collapse from exhaustion. I had no idea where to go or how long to run. Fatigue tightened my calf muscles, as if my body were crying out to me in a desperate plea to stop. I grew dizzy to the point that my vision was swirling, hues of black and red clouding my sight. Suddenly, we toppled to the ground, slamming into the mountainous terrain as a breeze grazed our cheeks. No, we must go further. No matter how many times I repeated the thought to myself, I couldn't will myself to lift my body from the ground. Then, I heard footsteps tapping somewhere in the close distance, and my eyelids drooped, slinking my consciousness into darkness. How long had I been asleep? I slowly widened my eyes, seeing a wood panel ceiling overhead as my limbs stretched in the warm futon. Then, when I laid upright from the futon, I noticed another body in the duvet beside me. Yamazaki-san?
雪村君、よかった、気がついたのか。
Are you the one who's been taking care of me while I was unconscious?
当たり前だろう。なかなか目を覚まさなかったから随分と心配したんだぞ。
I heaved a heavy sigh in relief, attempting to piece together my memories of when I was last awake. Yeah, I remember now. We planned a rescue mission to Itabashi, an imperial hotbed, in order to save Kondo-san. What happened to Kondo-san and Okita? Are they okay?
そのあたりの事情は私から説明した方が早いだろうな。
Matsumoto-sensei? What are you doing here?
松本先生は俺たちの命の恩人だ。倒れていた俺たちを救ってくださったんだからな。
ああ、私が君たちを見つけたのは幕府陸軍隊の支援をするために会津へ向かう道中のことだった。その途中、板橋宿を過ぎたあたりで行き倒れがいると聞きつけてな。向かった先で君たちの顔を見たときは心臓が飛び出るかと思ったよ。
そうか。I can't believe to thank you enough. It could almost be considered a divine intervention that it was Matsumoto-sensei of all people who'd found us. I lowered my head to bow at him once more, only for Matsumoto-sensei to scratch his head dejectedly.
それより山崎君に聞いたが大変なことになっていたようだな。
We stayed behind from the main troops' vanguard to keep watch over Edo, but then we got word of Kondo-san's capture.
その近藤さんと沖田君はな、残念ながら亡くなったそうだ。
I see. Silence filled the room after Matsumoto-sensei spoke. Although I expected as much, nothing could stop my heart from feeling like it shattered into 1,000 pieces. Soon my eyes were puffy with a stream of tears.
すまん。近藤さんは別としても、沖田君については私の失態だ。まさか療養先から脱走するだけの体力が残っていたとは。
いえ、松本先生の責任ではありません。沖田さんは自らの死地をあの場所だと決めていたんだと思います。
Just like this vast majority of stories where people believe Okita died because he went after a cat to kill it. So technically, he went out on his own terms in that story.
伏して死ぬよりも武士として局長や仲間のために刀を振るって戦って死ぬことを選んだ。あの人はそういうお人です。俺はそんな新選組一番組組長を誇りに思います。
そうか。まったく武士というやつは。
Matsumoto-sensei shook his head in frustration, rubbing his temples with his fingers before looking at me.
雪村君、体の方は大丈夫かね。だいぶ衰弱していたようだが。
I'm fine. Thank you. But, forget about me. How are Yamazaki-san's wounds?
真っ先に見せてもらったよ。彼が羅刹となったことも聞いた。傷口が再生しないことから察するに、コードーさんは羅刹の弱点を知っているんだろう。
Indeed he has. One that we haven't come across before, but now we have, and it's frightening to think about.
小刀に毒でも塗られていたか、材質そのものが毒なのかわからんが、羅刹も万能ではないということさ。
Wait, does that mean Yamazaki-san's scars are permanent?
いや、血は止まっている。羅刹特有の治癒力が働いていないだけで、自然治癒に向かっているのは間違いない。
Oh, what a relief.
だが、傷口が治るまでは少しかかる。ある程度は静養が必要だな。
Yeah, about that.
先生には申し訳ありませんが、そんな暇はありません。コードーさんの計画を知ってしまった以上、今後どうするのか考える必要がある。そして必要であれば俺一人でも奴の愚かな野望を叩き潰して、
その羅刹の力を持って敵の羅刹を打ち果たすというのかね。
Matsumoto Sensei's face wrinkled with frustration in response to Yamazaki-san's insistent attitude. Yamazaki! Please!
毒をもって毒を制すとの言葉もある。その行動自体を責めることはするまい。だが、君は分かっているのか。羅刹の力は自らの寿命を激しく削る。その事実が示すことの意味を。
ええ、俺は一度死んだ身ですから、今さら寿命など恐れはしません。
Hearing Yamazaki-san shed any concern for himself or his future felt like a knife digging underneath my skin.
Ugh, I can imagine that in my head, and it's not a very pleasant thing.
All of a sudden, my chest tightened in pain, and I did my best to keep my feelings hidden. Meanwhile, Matsumoto Sensei shot Yamazaki-san a look of scrutiny.
本来なら羅刹となった君の前で言うべきことではないかもしれないが、それでもあえて言わせてもらおう。羅刹は死者を動かしているも同然の下法。決して君が頼るべき力ではないよ。
その意味では医術も同じでしょう。死ぬはずだった命を救うのが医術ならば、人の命をつなぎ止める落ち水の力も医術と本質的に同じ。
違う。
Matsumoto Sensei swiftly denied Yamazaki-san's claim. He kept his composure, taking a deep breath before dismantling Yamazaki-san's argument.
医術とは人を治すための術。患者の心身を正常な状態に近づけて再び立ち上がる力を与えるためのものだ。だが落ち水はどうだ。あれは心身をより狂わせる存在。一時の力と引き換えに頼れば頼るほど人を壊していくだけ。それは生きるための力とは全く相入れない存在だ。
Another heavy sigh came from Matsumoto Sensei's mouth as he stepped away from us, placing his hand on the room's exit door handle.
忘れるな、山崎君。羅刹の力は一時の勝利をもたらすが、代わりに 君から未来を奪う。君が死ねば悲しむ人間がいる。君の命は君が思うより重いんだ。
Eat away your body and mind. I repeated Matsumoto Sensei's words, letting them sink in as I bowed in front of him as he exited the room. If the risk of using the Fury powers were as costly as Matsumoto Sensei had suggested, it made Father's plot all the more nefarious, as no one should be made to suffer such a horrific condition. I had to steady my anxious hands.
俺たちはこれからどうするべきなんだろ
For starters, my father revealed some important information about where the Furies are headed. I guess that means we've completed the mission given to us by the Shinsengumi. But we're not gonna report to the Shinsengumi. But I'm not sure if we should tell them everything that we saw.
理由を聞かせてくれ。
Well, it's just like what you told Kazuma and Amagiri. If our goal is to ensure the survival of the Shinsengumi, who are off fighting their own war, we can't burden them with a task of this magnitude. If you agree with me, Yamazaki-san, then I believe this is best left for you and me to handle. We can't allow the Shinsengumi to spread itself too thin, so it's best if we keep this news to ourselves.
ああ、そうだな。風間や天霧に言われたからではない。俺たち自身の意志で。雪村光道を倒し、羅刹の計画を止める。新選組の誇りに水を差させるものか。
Let's do it. Guys, I haven't had lunch. This is a terrible idea. I need food! I require nutrition. I don't know what to get. I don't know what I should even eat, actually. I'm thinking. Give me a moment, I'm thinking. The Battle of Toba Fushimi. Why are we back at the Battle of Toba Fushimi? The Battle of Katsunuma. The Shinsengumi's vanguard had departed Edo, battling in Utsunomiya during an arduous trek to Aizu. The fate of Utsunomiya Castle dangled by a thin thread. As the Imperial Army fought to strip the Shinsengumi of their dignity, murdering their soldiers and executing their chief in cold blood, the Shinsengumi persevered, pushing further into Aizu without letting their hopeful light extinguish. It was quite literally do or die, and the Shinsengumi, refusing to whimper like a wounded animal, was edging closer to the second option. If it were at all possible, Yamazaki-san and I would have given anything to join them in this momentous battle. Until we drew our dying breaths, the pair of us would have been there, side by side as the majestic flag of Makoto waved overhead. However, there was a battle of our own, some unfinished business that pulled us away from our friends. It was a battle for retribution. Hopefully, Father would learn to atone for his dastardly sins. Although history would likely contain no record of this battle, it had an impact on thousands of lives, enough to steer our country's path from total chaos. I mean, disaster also works as a word. A few days had passed since, along with Matsumoto-sensei, we entered a secluded hiding place within the shogunate encampment. Summer kissed our sin with humid air, even all the way in the country's northeast, as we awaited news for which we had been growing anxious.
会津の新選組本隊はこれから白川城を攻めるそうだ。
Shirakawa Castle. The same one that runs along the Osho Kaido, right? Do you think Hichikata-san is planning on using that road to funnel and flank the Imperial Army forces?
もちろんそれが最大の目的だろう。だが俺の予想が正しければ白川城を攻める理由はもう一つある。
There was a long wooden table upon which Yamazaki-san sketched a hand-drawn map of the region, tracing the shape of Shirakawa Castle with his finger.
これはまだ噂話に過ぎないが、あの城に新政府軍が入城して以降、周辺の村や町で異変が起きているそうだ。人が忽然と消える。夜な夜な辻斬りが出る。そして被害者は執拗に切り刻まれる。
Oh no. Could it be?
まず間違いない。新政府側の羅刹部隊の仕業だろう。
Do you suspect Hijikata-san to know all of this? Do you think that's why they're heading to Shirakawa Castle? Both Yamazaki-san and I were no strangers to the mettle of the Shinsengumi. In fact, we admired it. Neither the amount nor the power of the Furies could deter Hijikata-san and his men from achieving victory. Still, a haunting thought lingered. If they faced the new heightened Furies developed by Father, the massive casualties would be unavoidable. For the Shinsengumi, who were already operating with a less than ideal amount of men, this battle will come to define them and their future. The smaller the Shinsengumi embers in Kyo had grown into a wildfire, burning and burning until everything in sight was engulfed in flames. Fate had a sense of cruel humor, it seemed, and that the Shinsengumi would find its own darkest secret.
それでいいはずがない。たとえ新選組が桜のようにいずれは散りゆく定めだとしても、それはこの戦いにおいてじゃない。だから奴らは俺が倒す。新選組の手を煩わせることなく。
You mean we will? I interjected Yamazaki-san's bow with a quip and a smile. My connection to him deepened as I watched his resolve gather strength throughout our time together. I was becoming swept by a peculiar feeling. I'm aware of the fact that I can't serve beside you on the battlefield, but I'll be damned if you go alone. If fighting's what you want, then I'm staying with you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
だが戦う相手は雪村行動だぞ。君にとっては辛い戦いとなる。
Oh shit. The answer is... I know, I'm ready. I know, but I'm ready for him. If everything he stated back in Itabashi was true, if he aims to sink this country into oblivion just to fulfill some selfish ideology, then I will personally see to it that Kodo Yukimura is killed. As his daughter, this is my burden to bear.
君は強くなったな。そこまで覚悟を決めたなら、もう何も言うことはない。共に行こう、雪村君。
Well, we better get moving. I think there's a lot for us to do before we hit the road. I exhaled a deep breath, preparing myself to stand as I noticed Yamazaki-san in the corner of my eyes. His eyes were shifty, almost evasive, and he remained still despite my segue. Is something wrong? We need to move quickly, or the Shinsengumi will reach the castle before us.
いや、それは分かっている。だが、その前に君へ頼みがあるというか。
A favor? What is it? I don't want you to have any regrets or unfinished business before we embark on this journey.
心残り。心残りか。そうだな。言わなければきっと一生後悔するというか。よし。
Yamazaki-san began taking deep breaths, as if to motivate himself, and he stared intently into my eyes. Conviction burned behind his timid eyes, and for a moment I expected him to challenge me to a duel. Finally, he opened his mouth to speak.
だな。君の血を吸わせてくれないか。
Are you coming down with bloodlust? Yamazaki-san had been fidgeting nervously in his seat, and his breathing had been staggered, which piqued my interest. If that were the case, then I should, as always, for round 4, and for the final time, because I know nothing about Chizuru fruit, for the final time, give him blood. I immediately unsheathed my kodachi and braced myself for the blade's sting against my delicate hand. In a fit of panic, Yamazaki-san reached out, stopping me from cutting my skin open.
いや、違うんだ。今は別に苦しいわけじゃない。ただほら、君は今までもそうして手の甲を傷つけて俺に血を与えてくれていただろう。
Does it seem weird to you? Drinking blood, I mean.
いや、ただだな。これは伊藤さんが西洋の劇作家がどうのと無駄に語ってくれた話だが。
Yamazaki, what? Yamazaki, what?
西洋では手の甲への接吻は忠誠の証を示す代物になるらしい。
Loyalty? I was a bit perplexed as to what Yamazaki-san was saying.
もちろん伊藤さんの無駄な発言を鵜呑みにしているわけではないのだが、最近はどうもそれが気になってしまうんだ。
There's that sprite I love again.
君との関係は忠誠ではなく、もっと対等なものにしたいというか。口づけるならあれだ。同じ場所がいいというかだな。
I drew an invisible line between Yamazaki-san's eyes and what they were pointing towards, noticing they had fixed firmly on my lips. Without speaking, I touched them with my fingers. If my assumptions were correct, it would mean that Yamazaki-san wanted... Is this what you want?
そういうことだ。
By the time I understood the gist of what he'd been getting at, I couldn't help but feel my heart race.
しかしこれはあくまで俺の希望であって、君が嫌だというのなら無理には。
Wait, so you're fine with not doing it?
いや、
I watched as the hesitation left Yamazaki-san's body. He reacted like a child, refusing to let go of something precious as he drew me in closer to his body.
嫌だと言っても話はしない。もう二度と君のことを。
There's no way I'd ever let that happen. His timid eyes glowed eagerly, and I bit into my lower lip roughly. At first there was a dull pain, then the metallic tang of blood touched my tongue. It was raw, almost indelible. Yamazaki-san puckered his mouth, and as our lips met, the faint taste of blood became more pronounced. To Fury's, I imagined this taste was akin to his saccharine nectar of the highest order. We could also just say ambrosia, but alright. For Yamazaki-san, however, he seemed less interested in the tang of blood and more in the passionate embrace of our supple lips. Yamazaki-san's tongue traced shapes around the cut on my lip, flicking at it gently.
痛かったら言ってくれ。
I think many people say this is the best kiss in the game. I'm gonna have to agree. I'm gonna have to agree on that one. If I said that it hurt, would you stop?
それも無理だ。
I was becoming engrossed in the moment that I couldn't hear the sound of my own thoughts. My mind focused solely on the sensation of his tongue, rapidly pressing against the cut to draw more blood in soft, sensuous movements. If my blood has the power to breathe life into you, then... Yamazaki-san, I offer my body to you.
ありがとう、千鶴。
Our kiss resumed, and I lost myself in the scent and warmth of Yamazaki-san's intimate closeness. Father, no, Kodo Yukimura, and his fearsome army of savage furies awaited us in Shirakawa. I clasped a fragile wish in my heart, hoping to stop them before they crossed blades with the Shinsengumi. The night was gorgeous and moonlit cascading underneath a radiant sparkle of scattered stars. It was midnight. Yamazaki-san and I were hidden behind thick tree trunks. We kept ourselves low to the ground, taking gradual steps to get a glimpse of the massive fortress. Wow, this castle is enormous.
江戸から北へ向かう場合、多くはこの欧州街道を通ることになる。だから街道沿いにあるこの白川城は東北の用地と呼ばれるようになったんだ。
If I understood Yamazaki-san correctly, Conquering this castle granted his victor control of both Edo and the entire northeastern region. Edo was only a day's travel away from here. By the time Edo would receive any word of a potential attack on Shirakawa, it would be too late to retaliate, making this the ideal spot for any zealous leader to plot a coup with an army of furies under his command. We checked everywhere, I think. There doesn't seem to be any guards overseeing the perimeter.
おそらく奴らはこれからやってくる新選組と戦うことを想定しているからな。羅刹の特性を知っている新選組なら間違いなく昼に戦いを挑んでくると踏んでいるはず。故に俺たちにとってはそれが好きになる。
Because who in their right mind would plan on provoking a fury at night?
そういうことだ。行こう、千鶴。
All was just as Yamazaki-san had predicted. Shirakawa had no guards stationed in view. Entering the castle proved to be much easier than we expected, but as we stepped foot into the hall, a grotesque stench made Yamazaki-san and I nauseous. A horrible scent of stale blood stung our nostrils. From out of the shadows leapt Yamazaki-san, subduing a furious foot soldier standing idly beside the entrance. I sighed in heavy relief, since technically I was supposed to serve as the lookout. I think the coast is clear, Yamazaki-san. I don't sense anyone else nearby.
ああ、ありがとう。こちらも今しがた片付いた。
We had successfully infiltrated the castle, but it was eerily quiet, which aroused my suspicions. The only other beings we had encountered were furious soldiers, patrolling the hallways cautiously. I wonder if he was able to turn everyone in the castle into furies.
いや、まだそれほどの羅刹を生み出すほど落ち水の量産には至っていないはず。だがそれも時間の問題だろうな。
Shirakawa Castle, its surrounding villages, the Tohoku region, and potentially the rest of the country will bathe in blood, same as this forsaken castle. I shuddered at the thought, feeling an electrifying chill surge throughout my entire body. We need to hurry. I think we're close to the castle tower.
ああ。とはいえここから敵は増えるだろう。ここまでは不意をついて仕留めてきたが、多数の相手と戦うとなれば俺は羅刹の力を使わずにいられるのか。
Matsumoto-sensei's words rang like a shrine bell. In response to Yamazaki-san's comment, I suggested that he don't use them! If at all possible, I would rather that you didn't activate your fury form, Yamazaki-san.
その理由は
I shouldn't have had to explain myself, considering that Amagiri warned Yamazaki-san would turn to ash. Matsumoto-sensei too had made explicit... Matsumoto-sensei too had made explicit mention about how taxing fury powers were on a human body. It was exhausting and demoralizing to think of them. However, well, the biggest reason is because I can't stand the thought of living without you. Long after this battle ends, or even after the end of the war, I want nothing more than to be with you. We can make a home together, spending our time in conversation and in laughter. Don't you see? You can't let your life go to waste because I need it to. I had a suspicion that I had been asking for too much from him. Victory in battle comes from any means necessary, and asking Yamazaki-san to deprive himself of his best means could spell doom for his chances. But even so... Without speaking, Yamazaki-san ran his slender fingers through my hair, stroking my forehead coolly.
君のその思いを 愛する人と生きていたい。君と共に今度は人を殺すんじゃなく、人を幸せにするような生活をしたい。
Yamazaki-san.
約束しよう。俺は可能な限り羅刹の力を使わないで戦い抜く。君と共に生きるために。
After confirming our position, Yamazaki-san and I slid through the rest of the castle, nervously poking our heads around the corner to avoid being noticed. We hid in the shadows, holding our breaths as we snuck away from moonlit areas in the hallway. I wasn't sure of how long we had been sneaking around the castle, given its expansive infrastructure. Shirakawa Castle was a true marvel. Or at least it had been before it was cursed with the haunting stench of death. Before long, we reached the center of the castle's interior, the Grand Hall. It was ornate, almost garnished with large rectangular tables stretching along the length of the room, which presumably held numerous guests in its heyday. Hello, Cam. Welcome to the stage. My father, Kodo Yukimura, stood at the opposite end of the room, peering at us menacingly. He sat in the Lord's chair, grinning like the castle was his for the taking.
見つけたぞ、雪村行動。
No! You don't have to sing on the stage. It's just something I say. Because technically, this thing is my stage, so I'm performing for you. So yay! Whoop.
おや、新選組が到着するにしてはずいぶん早いと思っていましたが、まさか懲りもせず単独で、しかも土産まで連れてやってくる。
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
どうやら沖田君の死からは何も学ばなかったと見えますね。
Kodo, don't you dare bring up Okita's death, you bastard. Father scoffed, relishing in his dismissal. My heart turned inside of my chest. See, Cam, now you're making me worried about what you're about to say. That man, my father, is my enemy. No matter how many times I repeated the thought, however, it couldn't soothe the pain of its glare.
こうして千鶴を連れてきてくれたことには感謝しますが、あいにくのんびりと君の相手をしている暇はないんですよ。
Ooh. Nice, Cam.
私はこれからやってくる新選組と戦わなければならないのでね。
ああ、知っているさ。俺たちはそれを阻止しに来たのだから。
We won't let the Shinsengumi endanger himself by marching here without stopping you first. Sure you can. There is a Discord command. Father, this ends here and now.
全く理解できないな。私が手を出そうが出すまいが、どのみち新選組は旧幕府軍もろとも歴史の敗者となるのだよ。
Hold on.
こで散ろうが結果は同じこと。
There,
なぜ無駄な戦いをするのだね。
there is a section in there where you can just post art. So yeah.
貴様にはわかるまい。武士を目指し、この時代を駆け抜けて、やっとその夢に手が届いて、彼らは今も武士として戦い続けている。そんな新選組の誇りに、貴様などに水を入れさせるものか。
誇りか。くだらない。そんなものは犬にでも食わせればいい。人は皆死ねば無黒なのだから。
There we go. Should still be a light melody.
ならば私はその時代錯誤な誇りとやらを踏みにじってやろう。彼らも羅刹にしてやろうかとも思ったが、新選組は全て羅刹兵の餌にした方が良さそうだ。
させてたまるか。
Wow. Hold on. There's a lot going on. Oh god. Alright. Alright. Eh? Anyway. Yamazaki-san whipped out a kunai and hurled it towards father, who responded in turn with a flying scalpel before the two blades clanged in midair. Then Yamazaki-san sidestepped, closing the distance between himself and father in quick fashion.
なかなかに早い。あくまで人間にしてはだが。とはいえ、私とこう見えて鬼の端くれだ。
Handsome appearance, huh? With a razor-sharp scalpel in hand, father slashed the Yamazaki-san, ripping a long tear through his pant leg. I gasped, knowing full well that the scalpel was likely coated in poison. One well-aimed strike was all it took to induce a state of catatonic shock in Yamazaki-san. Oh god! Please apply some hair. Each of Yamazaki-san's steps were careful and calculated.
そんなに悠長に戦っている暇はあるのかね。ここは私の城なのだよ。
Oh, goody! Fury's exactly.
侵入者か。
Yamazaki-san! Fury's incoming!
分かっている。
All of a sudden, a group of Furies stormed into the hall, having been seemingly alerted of our presence. Well, father is our father, so... eh. But, yeah! I hate him. I hate Kodo. I hate him with a passion, but purely for this route. The startling crash of the doors flying open took Yamazaki-san and myself by surprise. Another flurry of scalpels were viciously flung at Yamazaki-san, hitting both him and a furious soldier beside him. I screamed as Yamazaki-san's hand became limp, and I watched his katana clang against the bloody tatami. Yamazaki-san?
今ので両腕の剣を断った。これでもう腕は上がらんよ。
You're right, Cam. He shouldn't. Another pair of Furies came sprinting into the Great Hall, much to our chagrin. I was becoming continually horrified and shocked to see our situation worsen by the minute. However, I steeled myself, unsheathing my kodachi which elicited a condescending chuckle from father.
無駄だよ、千鶴。お前の腕で羅刹に勝てるとでも。
No, I doubt I'll be able to take them all. But that's no reason just to sit and watch while you torture the man I love! I mustered all of my courage, howling at my own father as I prepared to slice my kodachi upon my own arm.
まさか。
血だ
I suddenly recalled something father had told me. To a fury, a demon's blood was more precious than gold or nectar. How convenient for me. The furies took immediate notice, their pupils dilating as they shot me an aggressive and ravenous glance. I'm fine! Don't worry about me! Now's your chance!
わかった。
無駄なあがきよ。いくら羅刹を引きつけたところで、肝心の山崎君がもはや戦える体ではない。羅刹と化したところで腕すら動くまい。
いや、お前を倒すのに羅刹の力など必要ない。
Yamazaki-san's arms hung loosely beside his waist as he bolted towards the Furies, kicking his feet against the ground. His movements were languid, far removed from the impressive display shown earlier during his thirsty outrage. But there was still purpose in his step. It's a very long story, Kim! It was inspiring watching his desire to live flourish under these harrowing circumstances, which he had noticeably lacked as a Fury.
お前はただの人間に負けるんだ。雪村コード。
たわごと。
Another handful of scalpels were flung towards Yamazaki, to which he responded with a reflexive spin that twisted him low to the ground beside his sword. Yamazaki-san bent his knees, kicking one more at the tatami mat to boost himself into the air.
No!
The impact of Yamazaki-san's leap caused his katana to bounce in the air shortly after him. For a second, his sword circled in the air like a windmill, twirling slowly in front of Yamazaki-san. Yamazaki-san kicked the butt of the blade's hilt as it spun in midair, redirecting its force to blast it towards father. The blade ricocheted off of Yamazaki's foot like a bullet, and with the velocity of lightning, the sword flew straight into father's chest, right above his heart. Father's body shivered quietly, and as blood trickled out of his chapped lips, he fell to the floor. Yamazaki-san, however, hadn't stopped there. He darted to the ground to grab the scalpels scattered upon the floor, and whipping his arms in a flailing motion towards the Furies encircling me. I watched a flying scalpel pierce through the throat of a fury inches from my face, specks of blood hitting my face as the fury gurgled quietly.
やった
Cotton bud. Yamazaki-san, are you alright?
なんとか
予想もしなかった。まさか武士の魂である刀を足毛にするとは。
Thank you, Cam!
力で勝てなくても腕が持ち上がらなくても戦う術はある。沖田さんが教えてくれたんだ。
He remembers something from Okita!
なるほど。君たちは一人で戦っていたわけではないということですか。
Father spit up blood, and I could feel his throat tightening as he coughed. He took a deep breath, slowly shifting his perusing gaze towards me. Ugh. I felt queasy in his watchful eye.
知っての通り、鬼の一族は非常に高い再生力を持っている。私は死ぬまで諦めない。今すぐにでも首をはねなければ後悔することになりますよ。
I prepared myself for the possibility of killing him. At least so I thought. But here I was, confronting the situation with trembling hands and a scratchy throat. The knowledge of his sins seemed miles away from us, and all that I could focus on was our relationship. After all, this man was my...
刀を貸してくれ。君に手を下させるにはあまりに酷だ。
No, I can handle it. He is my father, and I must atone for his sins. We were family, and his legacy ended with me. By allowing someone else to perform the execution, I was wrongfully absolving myself of responsibility. Yamazaki-san noticed my trepidation, and he moved to rest his hand upon my shoulder in silent support. I inhaled deeply, assuring myself of my conviction. Father, this pains me, but you've left me with no other choice. I raised my hand into the air, ready to swing my kodachi downwards at him in a crescent motion. My breath was held tightly in my chest when...
どけ。
A coarse voice sparked from behind me, and before I could blink, a steel flash blinded my line of sight. Father? In one fell swoop, Father's head separated from his neck, and the mysterious figure flecked the blood from his blade onto the ground in a merciless display.
風間千景、貴様。
どのみち貴様らではその男を殺すことはできなかったろう。だから俺が手を下してやったまで。今のは一族の恥を注いだ褒美代わりだと思っておけ。
It's the bitch! The bitch is here! I hate his guts!
風間、あなたはいつも一言多い。
Amagiri, you're here too.
ええ、辛い役目でしたが、無事やり遂げてくれたようですね。城内の羅刹兵はほぼ片付けました。城外の羅刹は知らぬいが仕留めていることでしょう。
At last, our most permanent ambition was fulfilled. Our business in Shirakawa had ended. Kazuma shut his eyes and nodded quietly, as if in agreement to my sentiment, and I called out to them. Mate! Why would you go through all the trouble to help me defeat my father?
くだらん問いだな。奴は鬼の一族に背いた。それだけだ。雪村千鶴。俺を父の敵として恨みたくば恨む。
そのような態度では本当に鬼と呼ばれかねませんよ。ですが私たちはおとぎ話で言う鬼ですから、それもいいかもしれません。もう会うこともないでしょうが、お二人ともお元気で。
Without saying another word, the two demons vanished like mist, leaving behind no trace. Yamazaki-san and I were hushed for a second, and when we verified that the demons were gone, I fell to my knees in relief, weakly crumpling to the ground.
最後の最後でやられたな。
Agreed. I think they meant well, though. It was their way of showing compassion.
ああ、奴らに言い損ねたな。おとぎ話にだっていい鬼と悪い鬼がいるだろうと。
Sunlight was emerging through the faltering darkness. With a newfound stride, Yamazaki-san and I departed from Shirakawa Castle, making our way towards the camp in which the Shinsengumi had allegedly resided. I could barely contain myself as I prepared myself to reveal our success in purging the castle of its furies. Aside from our bit of good news, Yamazaki-san and I had to inform them of the decision which we had made. As we entered the camp, the Shinsengumi men were still mobilizing their troops and battalion to siege the castle, making our report all the more surprising. Appearing out of the blue prompted a celebration, and Shimada welcomed us along with the others back to the safety of the busy encampment. At first we delivered our news to Shimada briefly. Then he escorted us to a small clearing outside of the camp where Hijikata-san had been contemplating. Hijikata-san had his eyes fixed on the sky, and I clasped Yamazaki-san's hand before he kneeled on the ground.
そうか。お前らが行動さんを。すまなかったな、山崎、雪村。また重い役目を押し付けたようだ。
Please, there's nothing to apologize for.
決着をつけたのは新選組の一員としての役目もありますが、俺たちが未来に踏み出すためにもどうしても必要なことでしたから。
そうか。
Wind blew through our hair calmly, filling the blanks in our conversation with a peaceful hum. It was a gentle but melancholic silence. Hijikata-san then muttered under his breath.
その踏み出す未来って俺たち新選組と同じ道か。
いいえ、違います。俺は千鶴と共にこのまま新選組を抜けるつもりです。
His lack of response was a tad unsettling. I hoped, perhaps optimistically, that he'd understand. He heaved a small sigh, which the wind carried away from us into the forest trees nearby.
申し訳ありません、土方さん。影として新選組を支えると誓いながら、俺はその誓いを。
謝るな、山崎。男だったら自分の決断を疑うな。先頭行くやつがブレちまったら、お前を信じてついていくやつは何を信じりゃいいかわからなくなる。だから前を行く 背中に迷いを見せちゃいけねえ。少なくとも俺はそうしてきた。お前はもう新選組の影じゃねえ。立派な一人の男だ。俺の言葉に惑わされず、己が決めたこと、己の言葉を信じてこれからも生きていけ。
ありがとうございます。
These, I was convinced, were the last words that Hijikata-san would ever give to Yamazaki-san as his commander. Yamazaki-san reacted by clasping my hand tighter, which I gladly reciprocated.
しかし、新選組を離れたとして、お前は一体何をするつもりだ。
意志を志そうと思っています。俺はもう刀を振るわない。人を救うための道を目指します。愛する人と共に。
Hijikata-san nodded in agreement to all of Yamazaki-san's articulated sentiments, prompting him to walk a short distance away underneath the radiant sunlight. A lonesome twinkle shone in the corner of Hijikata-san's eyes, eliciting a somber feeling in my stomach.
切り合いなんかじゃなく、人を助けて生かすために生きろ。だが、新選組の大使だったことは忘れるなよ。胸に刻んでおけ。
Hijikata-san left us with that, and he ambled away from us. Our paths were beginning to fray, for the better.
ありがとうございます、土方さん。
May the fortune of war be ever in your favor. And so, Yamazaki-san and I traded glowing smiles. We bid our dearest friends farewell, taking the first step towards carving a life together. Yo! Okay. We're done with Yamazaki's route. Well, the main one. We have our epilogue after the credits, but apparently, that's trivia. Yamazaki's route was actually the hardest thing to write for them, apparently. I think they did it justice, considering historically and all the other routes. Yamazaki ends up dying at the end of part 1, except for Okita for some reason. We'll get to that. But the fact that Yamazaki gets to live for his route, the way that it played out, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's just... It also makes you hate Kodo more, because he purposely injected poison to Chizuru as a small child. It makes you genuinely hate the man, which no other route really actually does. I guess in Cosmo route, you could say yes, but that makes me go more ew than This one makes me go a lot more. But goddamn. Even though my favorite tropes were in other words, this is still best boy. And nothing is gonna stop me from saying Yamazaki is best boy. Nothing is gonna stop that. He also does a lot of other things that the other characters don't do. But I'm gonna save that for the top 12. And now we are gonna get our epilogue. Eventually, game. Thank you. My, today is quite lovely. A pleasant breeze blew through the hallway of our home, indicating that summer was soon upon us. Petal blossoms and fresh leaves were scattered along the doorstep, remnants of a fruitful spring. We had made a home for ourselves at Yukimura Clinic, humbly residing on the outskirts of Edo. As I felt the warm gust of wind while walking through the hallway, I was flipping through a bound notebook. So our plans for tomorrow are... In the morning, we have a checkup scheduled, and then Ibuki's child is coming in for one as well! Hey, wait a minute! Hey, Ibuki has a child? Alright, so I don't know how long it's been. The game refuses to tell us how long it's been. I'm gonna say 1 or 2 years. Just to give us a timeline. Additionally, we're running rather low on supplies, so I'll have to make my way to the herbal store. It was daunting reviewing my list of tomorrow's tasks. Business at the clinic was only increasing, so there was scant a moment to rest. As I made a mental note of my thoughts, I stopped in front of Yamazaki-san's door and quietly slid it open. Thanks for another day at work, Yamazaki-sensei.
その言い方はやめてくれ千鶴。まだ少し気恥ずかしいんだ。
We are looking this in its full glory! My boy! But that's what you are, aren't you? Susumu, you are now the resident doctor of this clinic, licensed and everything. It was awe-inspiring. Upon making our return to Edo, the two of us immediately began re-establishing Yukimura Clinic. In no time at all, Susumu invested himself into his studies, expanding his expertise to become a doctor. Even with diligent studying, running a clinic was no simple task, but this was no obstacle to Susumu. Each and every night, he reviewed my father's works on Western studies, peering the research that both father and Matsumoto-sensei dedicated their lives to. It was natural, at least initially, for our first round of patients to be skeptical of visiting a doctor who had been admittedly wet behind the ears. However, as of late, our neighbors began frequenting the clinic more often and spread word of our work. Soon after, visitors and patients of all kinds came trickling to our clinic, some very regularly. So, how's everything going for you in here?
今でも実感が湧かないな。俺が本当に人の命を救う仕事をしているなんて。人の命を預かるというのは、戦場とはまた違った意味で重いと思う。
It only takes a second to take a life, but saving someone requires a lifetime of practice. At least, that is what Matsumoto-sensei had said.
まったくだ。耳が痛いな。
I couldn't help but smile in agreement with Susumu's honest, heartfelt statement. A small sigh left his thin lips, and he murmured in a content tone.
先日、戦が終わったそうだ。
Yo, never mind. I'm wrong about 1 or 2 years. It's gonna be at least 6 months. Or something. Maybe 8 months. I don't remember what month we started this in.
旧幕府軍が函館に築いた蝦夷共和国は新政府軍の総攻撃の前に降伏し、鳥羽伏見から続いた一連の戦はこれで決着がついたことになる。
I wondered to myself what became of the Shinsengumi. I hadn't thought to ask. Susumu was noticeably hushed about it. Instead, we turned to look outside of the window. In our hearts and minds, our thoughts lingered with the survival of our courageous, fearless friends. Do you regret it?
何？
The fact that you weren't there with the Shinsengumi when all of it went down in their last moments?
そうだな。心残りがないと言えば嘘になる。今も俺は幾度となく戦場の夢を見る。だけどもうあそこに俺の居場所はない。これからの俺の生は、俺の人生はここで多くの人を幸せにすることだから。千鶴？
The people who need you? As a doctor, it's an admirable goal. But as your wife, it almost hurts me to hear it so. I stopped myself from going on, though from the sensation of Susumu's movements, he caught on. He turned his head towards me kindly, flashing an endearing smile to comfort me.
では、訂正しておく。多くの人を幸せにするのはもちろんだが。
We are looking at this in its full glory.
それより先に、俺には一番に幸せにしたい人がいる。
Susumu gradually brought his slender hand to my cheeks, drawing me slowly with his touch. He nudged me gently, bringing our lips together sensuously. I sensed fire in Susumu's breath.
言わなくても伝わると思うが、あえて言わせてくれ。愛してる、千鶴。
And I, you, Susumu. Aishiteru. He dedicated his life to fighting alongside the Shinsengumi, but he was mature enough to walk away. He renewed himself in a poetic and meaningful way. Along the way, there were struggles, no doubt. How much time Susumu had left to live was an unsolvable enigma to us both. Although Matsumoto-sensei was tirelessly researching methods of reversing the water of life's effects, a breakthrough had yet to be achieved. However, this made no difference on the love that Susumu and I shared together. If anything, our hearts were affirmed by how precious our time was together, and with our commitment to each other in hand, at least we could enjoy the present. And so ends all 12 roots, all 12 bachelors, all 12 stories and outcomes. And all that is left is for us to do Chizuru's personal route and, well, all the game overs and unrequited loves endings. That's it. That's all we have to do. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. EST, we are going to start Chizuru's route. And if anybody wants to join me for that one, that's fine. Because I am going to open that up again. But yeah, Jesus Christ. I can complete my top 10 list and everything else. Yeah. I'm going to go eat some food because I'm hungry. I've had no lunch. So, drink water, have a good day or night. Don't die because you didn't drink water. There may be a stream tonight, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.